The crystal towers of Viridian Prime sparkled under three suns, but Ambassador Jiho felt no warmth as he walked through the council chambers. The emergency meeting had been called at dawn, and the news was worse than anyone had imagined. "Show me the reports again," Jiho said to his aide, a young Keltharian with pale blue skin and worried eyes. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the outer rim sectors. Red marks covered 3 entire star systems. Each red mark meant the same thing: complete silence. No ships, no communications, no life signs, just empty space where millions of beings had lived just weeks ago. Fleet Admiral Minho stood at the center of the chamber, his usually perfect uniform wrinkled from sleepless nights. The proud Altarian had commanded the Council's forces for 20 years, but Jiho had never seen him look so defeated. "The Kepler system went dark yesterday," Minho reported, his voice heavy. "That makes 3 complete systems lost to the swarm. Our scout ships that went to investigate, they never came back." Jiho studied the data streams flowing across his tablet. The few reports they had were terrifying. Witnesses described machines that moved like living things, ships that could change shape, and weapons that learned how to fight better after each battle. The Void Swarm, as survivors called it, seemed unstoppable. "What about our fleets?" asked Council Leader Vera, an elderly woman from the Centauri colonies. "Surely our combined forces can stop these machines." Minho's laugh was bitter. "We tried. The 4th Fleet engaged them at Rigel Station 3 days ago. 47 ships went in. 3 came back. The survivors say our weapons barely scratched their hulls, but their weapons cut through our shields like they weren't there." The chamber fell silent. The Galactic Council had kept peace for over 400 years. Their fleets were the finest in the galaxy, equipped with the most advanced technology known. If they couldn't stop the swarm, what could? "The machines learn," reported Dr. Sua, the Council's chief scientist. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but now those eyes were filled with fear. "Every time we hit them with energy weapons, they adapt. Their armor changes. Our plasma cannons worked the first time, then became useless. The same with particle beams, quantum torpedoes, everything." Jiho felt cold despite the warm chamber. "How many systems are in danger?" "All of them," Sua replied quietly. "The swarm builds more of itself from whatever it destroys. Ships, stations, even planets. They tear everything apart and use the materials to make more machines. They're growing stronger every day." Admiral Minho activated another display. This one showed the swarm's movement pattern: a spreading circle of destruction, moving steadily toward the galaxy's core worlds. "At current speed, they'll reach the inner systems in 6 months," he said. "Earth in 8. The Council worlds in 10. The word Earth hung in the air like a bad smell. Most Council members looked down on the small blue planet. Humans were considered primitive, violent, and backwards. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and still fought wars among themselves. "We have to do something," Vera said desperately. "What about the emergency protocol?" Jiho had heard of the emergency protocol, but hoped it would never be used. It was a galaxy-wide distress signal, created during the Council's founding to call for help in case of total war. The beacon would reach every civilized world in the galaxy, asking for military aid. "It hasn't been used in over 1,000 years, Sua pointed out. "Some governments might not even remember what it means." "We have no choice," Minho said firmly. "Send the signal. Ask for help from anyone who will listen." The decision was made quickly. Within an hour, the emergency protocol was activated. The message was simple and desperate. "The galaxy faces extinction. Unknown enemy destroying entire systems. Request immediate military assistance. Rally point Keltharian system." Time is running out. Then they waited. The beacon would take time to reach the distant worlds, and responses would take even longer to arrive. In the meantime, the swarm continued its steady advance. The first responses came within hours. The proud Zenthari Empire sent polite regrets. They were dealing with internal security issues and could not spare any ships. The wealthy plutocrat worlds offered to donate money, but no soldiers. The crystalline hegemony said they would keep the victims in their thoughts and prayers. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy found excuses. The Void Hunters, famous for their military strength, went completely silent. The Machine Collective claimed they were updating their software. The Star Empire was restructuring their defense forces. By the end of the first day, responses had come from over 300 civilizations. Every single one said no. Cowards, Minho spat, throwing his tablet across the room. All of them. They'll wait until the swarm reaches their doorstep, then wonder why no one comes to help them. Jiho couldn't blame them, though he was disappointed. Fear made people selfish. Each government probably thought they could hide, or that someone else would solve the problem. They didn't understand that the swarm would eventually come for everyone. Admiral, called a communication officer from her station. We're receiving a response from Sector 7G. Minho frowned. Sector 7G? That's the outer spiral arm. Nothing important out there except, wait. His eyes widened. That's where Earth is. The message appeared on the main screen. It was short and written in simple trade speak. Message received and understood. Terran Defense Force mobilizing. Fleet departing immediately. Estimated arrival, 72 standard hours. Recommend defensive positions around Viridian Prime. Will coordinate with local forces upon arrival. Hold the line. Admiral Nari Kim commanding? The chamber erupted in surprised voices. Earth was sending help? The humans, who most council members considered barely civilized, were the only ones willing to fight. How many ships do they have? Vera asked. Sua checked her files. According to our last survey, the Terran Defense Force has maybe 200 ships. Most of them are old and their technology is at least 50 years behind ours. 200 ships, Minho repeated slowly, against a force that destroyed 3 fleets. Jiho felt something strange in his chest, a mixture of gratitude and sadness. The humans were coming to help, but they would be sailing into certain death. Their primitive ships would be destroyed just like the council fleets had been. Should we tell them it's hopeless? Vera asked quietly. No, Jiho said firmly. Someone finally answered our call. The least we can do is fight alongside them. Admiral Minho nodded grimly. Signal all remaining council forces. We'll make our stand here. If the humans are brave enough to come, we'll be brave enough to stay. Outside the crystal towers, the 3 suns continued to shine, but in the darkness between the stars, death was coming, and only Earth had answered the call for help. 3 days after the emergency protocol was sent, space around Viridian Prime lit up with incoming ships. But these weren't the sleek, elegant vessels the Council was used to seeing. These ships looked like flying bricks, thick, angular, and covered in armor plating. Battle scars marked their hulls, and some showed signs of hasty repairs. Ambassador Jiho watched from the observation deck as the human fleet took position. 200 ships, just as their files had said, but something felt different about them. These weren't parade ships or pleasure cruises. These were working vessels built for war. They look... Jiho's aide searched for the right word. Ugly, finished Admiral Minho. But there was respect in his voice. Functional, like they were designed by people who actually fight wars. The lead ship was enormous, bigger than any council vessel. Its hull was painted dark gray with white letters spelling out Soul's Hammer. As Jiho watched, smaller craft began flying between the human and council ships. Admiral Kim is requesting permission to come aboard, reported the communications officer. Granted, Minho replied. Let's meet these humans. 20 minutes later, Admiral Nari Kim walked into the council's war room. She was shorter than Jiho had expected, maybe 50 years old with gray hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform was simple and practical, with no decorations except for rank insignia. Behind her came a younger man in a similar uniform. Admiral Kim, Minho said formally. Welcome to Viridian Prime. I am Fleet Admiral Minho of the Alterian Defense Force. Nari shook his hand firmly. Thank you for the welcome. This is Commander Hanul Park, my tactical officer. I understand you have a problem with hostile machines. Her directness surprised Jiho. Most diplomatic meetings started with long speeches and formal greetings. Nari seemed more interested in getting to work. The situation is grave, Minho began, but Nari held up a hand. Show me what we're fighting, she said simply. The next hour was spent reviewing data. Nari studied every report, every tactical analysis, every survivor account. She asked sharp questions and took notes on a simple tablet. Commander Park examined the swarm's attack patterns, while another human officer, Captain Seong-Ho Lee, looked at the defensive positions. Your weapons are all energy-based, Nari observed after reviewing the fleet compositions. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, all very advanced. The finest in the galaxy, Minho said proudly. And they don't work. The blunt statement hung in the air. Minho's face darkened, but Nari continued calmly. The machines adapt to energy signatures. They learn how to deflect or absorb your weapons. What about kinetic weapons? Projectiles? Old-fashioned explosives? Dr. Sua looked confused. Kinetic weapons? Those haven't been used in warfare for centuries. They're too primitive, too inefficient. Nari smiled grimly. Sometimes primitive works better than advanced. Commander Park, show them our weapons loadout. The display changed to show the human ship's armaments. Jiho stared in disbelief. Railguns that fired metal slugs, chemical explosive warheads. Some ships even carried nuclear weapons. Technology so old it was considered barbaric. You're going to fight them with bullets? Minho asked incredulously. Bullets, bombs, and whatever else works, Nari replied. Our ships aren't pretty, but they're tough. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know how to break things that don't want to stay broken. Captain Lee grinned at the shocked expressions around the table. Don't worry about us, Admiral. Humans are very good at finding new ways to destroy stuff. Over the next few hours, Nari outlined her plan. The Council fleets would provide long-range support and evacuation duties. The human ships would engage the swarm directly, using their primitive weapons to see if the machines could adapt to simple kinetic force. This is suicide, Dr. Sua protested. Your ships will be destroyed. Maybe, Nari admitted. But we came here to fight, not to run away. If we're going to die, we'll take as many of those machines with us as we can. That evening, Jiho found himself in the human fleet's ready room aboard Sol's Hammer. The ship's interior was as practical as its exterior. Gray metal walls, functional lighting, everything built for efficiency rather than beauty. Human crew members moved with quiet confidence, preparing for battle. Your people seem very calm, Jiho told Commander Park. They're scared, Park replied honestly. But they volunteered anyway. Every person on every ship asked to be here. Even knowing it might be hopeless, Park smiled sadly. Especially then. That's what humans do. We show up when things look impossible. The human ships were different in other ways too. Jiho noticed that families served together. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, even married couples on the same crews. When he asked about this, Captain Lee explained. War is hard enough without being separated from the people you love. If we're going to fight, we fight together. If we're going to die, we die together. The concept shocked the council members. Their military doctrine kept families apart to avoid emotional complications. But watching the human crews, Jiho saw something powerful. People who fought not just for duty, but for each other. As the fleets prepared for battle, messages arrived from across the galaxy. More governments offered empty words of support. The Zenthari Empire sent a formal statement condemning the violence. The Crystalline Hegemony organized a prayer vigil. They're watching, Nari observed as she read the diplomatic communications, waiting to see if we succeed or fail. And if we fail? Jiho asked. Then they'll make their own deals with the swarm, or try to hide until someone else solves the problem. Nari's voice held no bitterness, just tired acceptance. People are the same everywhere, I guess. Most of them want someone else to take the risks. The swarm arrived 2 days later. Long-range sensors detected them at the edge of the system. Hundreds of ships in formations that hurt to look at. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single giant organism. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. Nari's voice came over the communication channels. Remember the plan? Council fleets maintain distance and provide support. Human ships will engage directly. Don't try to be heroes, we're all heroes just for being here. As the enemy fleet approached, Jiho felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The humans' plan seemed crazy, but it was the only plan anyone had tried. For the first time since the crisis began, someone was willing to fight instead of running away. Admiral, called the tactical officer. Swarm ships are entering weapons range. Nari nodded calmly. All ships, this is Sol's Hammer. We came a long way to have this fight. Let's make it count. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was leading the charge. The first shots of the battle lit up space like deadly fireworks. The swarm ships opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend light itself, while the council fleets responded with their most advanced energy weapons. The human ships held back, watching and learning. Ambassador Jiho gripped the railing of the observation deck as explosions bloomed across the darkness. The swarm vessels were unlike anything he had ever seen. They moved like living things, changing shape as they fought. Their black hulls seemed to absorb energy attacks, growing stronger with each hit. Council ships are taking heavy damage, reported Commander Park from her station aboard Soul's Hammer. The swarm's weapons are cutting through their shields. Admiral Nari watched the tactical display with cold eyes. As expected, their energy weapons are useless against adaptive armor. Signal all human ships. Begin attack pattern Alpha. The human fleet surged forward like a pack of hunting wolves. Their ships were slower and uglier than the Council vessels, but they moved with deadly purpose. Captain Taehyung Choi's destroyer Busan Runner led the charge. "All right, you metal bastards," Choi's voice crackled over the communication channels. "Let's see how you handle some good old-fashioned violence." The first human weapons to fire were railguns, magnetic cannons that hurled chunks of metal at incredible speeds. The projectiles slammed into swarm ships like hammers, punching clean through their hulls. For a moment, the enemy formation wavered. "Direct hits," shouted the weapons officer. Their armor isn't adapting. But the celebration was short-lived. The swarm ships began to change again, their hulls thickening and reshaping. Within minutes, the railgun shots were bouncing off harmlessly. "Damn," muttered Captain Seong-ho Lee from his cruiser, Incheon's pride. They learned fast. "Switch to pattern beta," Nari ordered calmly. "Chemical explosives close range." The human ships closed distance rapidly, ignoring the swarm's energy weapons. Their thick armor absorbed hits that would have destroyed Council vessels. When they got close enough, they launched missiles filled with simple chemical explosives. The results were devastating. The swarm ships had adapted to deflect energy and kinetic weapons, but they had no defense against old-fashioned bombs. Explosions tore through their formations, sending debris spinning into space. But the swarm was learning. Even as human missiles found their targets, the enemy ships began developing new defensive systems. Within an hour, they were shooting down most of the incoming warheads. "Pattern Gamma," Nari said grimly. "All ships prepare for ramming speed." Jiho couldn't believe what he was hearing. "They're going to ram the enemy ships?" "It's suicide," Dr. Sua whispered. On the tactical display, human ships began accelerating directly toward swarm vessels. Captain Choi's voice came over the channels again. "Busan Runner to all ships. It's been an honor serving with you. Tell my wife I kept my promise." Choi's destroyer slammed into a swarm constructor at full speed. The explosion lit up half the battlefield, taking out both ships in a ball of nuclear fire. But the tactic worked. The swarm AI couldn't adapt to ships being used as weapons. "All units, copy Busan Runner's attack pattern," ordered Captain Lee. "If they want a close fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The battle became chaos. Human ships rammed enemy vessels, launched boarding parties with nothing but magnetic boots and explosive charges, and used their own engines as bombs. Lieutenant Subin Kim led a team of Marines onto a damaged swarm ship, fighting through corridors filled with mechanical horrors. "These things are ugly up close," Subin reported as her team planted charges throughout the enemy vessel. "But they die just like anything else when you blow them up." The turning point came when Admiral Nari implemented what she called strategy. Omega, human ships deliberately allowed themselves to be captured by swarm tractor beams, then detonated nuclear charges from within the enemy formations. The swarm's efficiency became its weakness as the explosion spread through their connected networks. "The enemy fleet is breaking apart," Commander Park reported with disbelief in her voice. "We're actually winning." But the victory came at a terrible cost. Half the human fleet was gone, ships and crews consumed in the fires of battle. The survivors were battered and running low on ammunition. And this was just one swarm fleet out of many. As the last enemy ships were destroyed, Jiho found himself in the human fleet's medical bay. The wounded were everywhere, burned, injured, but still alive thanks to their ship's heavy armor and the skill of their medics. Dr. Yuna Song moved between the patients with quiet efficiency. "How many did we lose?" Jiho asked her. 43 ships, Yuna replied without looking up from her patient. "About 8,000 people. But we saved the system. 8,000 dead." The number hit Jiho like a physical blow. These humans had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers, and thousands had died doing it. "I'm sorry for your losses," he said quietly. Yuna finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired but not defeated. "Don't be sorry. Be grateful. And remember what they died for." Later, in the fleet's command center, Admiral Nari received reports from across the galaxy. The news was grim. The swarm had attacked 6 more systems while they fought here. Each attack was larger and better coordinated than the last. "They're learning from this battle," Commander Park observed. "Next time, they'll be ready for our tactics." "Then we'll have to find new tactics," Nari replied simply. "How many ships do we have left?" 112 combat-capable vessels. Ammunition is running low and we need time for repairs." Nari studied the galactic display. Red marks showed swarm activity across dozens of systems. Each mark represented millions of lives at risk. "Signal Earth," she decided. "Request immediate reinforcements and supply ships." "This war is just beginning." A communication officer looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving messages from several council worlds. They want to negotiate with the swarm." "Negotiate?" Captain Lee laughed bitterly. "With machines that eat entire planets? Good luck with that." Jiho felt sick. After everything they had witnessed, some governments still thought they could make deals with the enemy. They didn't understand that the swarm wasn't interested in territory or resources. It wanted everything, and it would never stop taking. "Let them try," Nari said coldly. "When the swarm tears apart their negotiation fleets, maybe they'll finally understand what we're fighting." Dr. Sua appeared on the command deck, carrying a data tablet filled with analysis of the destroyed swarm ships. "Admiral, we've learned something important. The enemy ships we captured contained construction templates. They're not just destroying civilizations, they're building something huge." "What kind of something?" Nari asked. "We're not sure yet, but based on the resource requirements, it's larger than anything we've ever seen, maybe the size of a small moon." The implications were terrifying. The swarm wasn't just a random plague of destruction. It had a purpose, a goal that required the resources of entire star systems. "How long do we have?" Jiho asked. Sua's face was pale. "If they continue at current pace, maybe 6 months before whatever they're building is complete. 6 months to stop a galaxy-spanning enemy with weapons beyond imagination. 6 months to convince the great powers to fight instead of hiding. 6 months to find a way to win an impossible war." Nari looked around at her officers, tired, wounded, but still determined. "Signal all human ships." "We're going hunting." "Hunting?" Park asked. "The swarm has other fleets out there. We're going to find them and destroy them one by one. We might not be able to stop them all, but we can make them pay for every system they take." As the human fleet prepared to leave Viridian Prime, messages poured in from across the galaxy. Some offered support, mostly words rather than ships. Others begged for protection. A few criticized the humans for being too aggressive, but one message stood out. It came from Earth itself, from the Terran Defense Council. Reinforcement fleets departing all major shipyards. Industrial capacity converted to war production. Earth stands with you. Hold the line. Humanity was going to war, not for conquest or glory, but because someone had asked for help and they were the only ones willing to answer. The galaxy would learn what that meant. 18 months had passed since the first battle at Viridian Prime, and the war had consumed the galaxy. Ambassador Jiho stood on the bridge of the human command ship, watching another battle unfold through the viewports. The elegant crystal towers of his homeworld seemed like a dream now. War had changed everything. The ship around him was no longer the pristine Soul's hammer he remembered. Battle scars covered every surface. Hastily welded patches marked where enemy fire had penetrated the hull, and the crew moved with the quiet efficiency of veterans who had seen too much death. Incoming swarm ships, bearing 27 Mark IV, called Lieutenant Day from the sensor station. 23 vessels moving in formation Delta. Admiral Nari Kim looked older than her years now, gray hair showing white streaks and new lines around her eyes. But her voice remained steady as she gave orders. "Signal Captain Han. Tell him to move his wolves into position." Captain Min Seok Han commanded what had once been a civilian cargo hauler called Daegu's Determination. The ship had been converted into a mobile weapons platform, bristling with missile pods and magnetic cannons. Its crew was a mix of humans and aliens who had volunteered to fight alongside Earth's forces. "Copy that, Admiral." Han's voice crackled over the communications. "Wolves are in position. Beginning attack run." Jiho watched as Han's squadron of converted freighters dove toward the swarm formation. These weren't the desperate ramming attacks of the early war. Humanity had learned to fight smarter, not just harder. The human ships spread out in a pattern that looked random but wasn't. When the swarm vessels tried to focus their fire, the humans scattered. When the enemy spread out to cover more area, the humans concentrated their attack. It was like watching a deadly dance. "Target their command ship," Nari ordered. "All batteries prepare to fire." The battle was over in 30 minutes. The swarm ships were destroyed, their wreckage spinning slowly in space. But Jiho felt no joy in the victory. For every enemy fleet they destroyed, 2 more appeared somewhere else in the galaxy. "Casualty report," Nari requested. 2 ships damaged, no losses. Commander Hanul Park reported. The crew of Pusan's Revenge request permission to continue the mission despite hull breaches. Denied. "Send them back for repairs." Nari's voice was firm. "We can't afford to lose good people to preventable accidents." This was another change the war had brought. In the early battles, human ships fought until they were destroyed. Now they had learned to preserve their forces for the long campaign ahead. The galaxy was too big and the enemy too numerous for heroic sacrifices alone. Engineer Yuna Song appeared on the bridge, carrying a tablet full of technical data. She had been promoted to chief weapons developer, after creating several innovations that gave human forces an edge against swarm adaptation. "Admiral, I have the report on our new ammunition," she said. "The dumb rounds are working perfectly. The swarm can't adapt to weapons that have no electronics to hack." Yuna's breakthrough had been simple but effective. Instead of smart missiles with advanced guidance systems, human ships now used simple projectiles that flew in straight lines. The swarm's sophisticated defense networks couldn't predict or counter something so basic. "What about the special project?" Nari asked quietly. Yuna's expression grew serious. "Project Hammer is ready for testing. But Admiral, if we use it, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know what we're capable of." Jiho didn't know what Project Hammer was, but the way the humans talked about it made him nervous. Throughout the war, Earth had shown a talent for finding new ways to destroy things. He wasn't sure he wanted to know what their latest invention could do. The war had changed more than just tactics. Captain Lee's ship, Inchin's Pride, now carried crew members from a dozen different species. Former council officers served alongside human marines, and refugee civilians had volunteered to operate weapons and repair systems. "The Alterian refugee fleet has arrived in Sector 7, reported Tactical Officer Hyunwoo Jang. They're requesting permission to join the next assault." Nari frowned. "Civilians shouldn't be fighting. Admiral, with respect." Admiral Minho's voice came over the communication system. "My people have lost everything to the swarm. We want to fight back." Minho had changed too. The proud Alterian who once commanded pristine council fleets now led a ragtag collection of refugee ships. His uniform was patched and faded, but his determination burned brighter than ever. "Very well," Nari decided. "But they follow human tactical doctrine. No heroic charges, no trying to prove their courage. We fight smart, or we don't fight at all." The refugee ships were just one example of how the war had united former enemies. Species that had barely spoken to each other now fought side by side. The swarm's relentless advance had taught the galaxy a hard lesson about cooperation, but the cost was enormous. Earth's industrial capacity had been pushed beyond all limits. Every factory, every shipyard, every mining station worked around the clock to supply the war effort. Families on Earth went without luxuries, so their military could have ammunition. Children grew up knowing their parents might never come home. "Signal from Earth Command," announced the communications officer. "New reinforcement fleet departing Sol system. Estimated arrival in 6 weeks, and how many ships?" Park asked. 300. Mix of new construction and converted civilian vessels. 300 ships. It sounded like a lot, but Jiho knew the terrible arithmetic of the war. The swarm was building new forces faster than humanity could destroy them. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more emerged from their hidden construction facilities. Dr. Sua had joined the human fleet as a scientific advisor, working to understand the enemy's technology. Her latest reports were troubling. "The swarm is definitely building something," she told the senior staff during their daily briefing. "Our intelligence suggests it's located in the Vega system, but we can't get close enough to investigate." "What kind of something?" Minho asked. "Based on resource calculations, it's enormous. Maybe the size of a space station, but with capabilities we can't imagine. If they complete it..." Sua's voice trailed off. "They won't complete it," Nari said firmly. "We'll find a way to stop them." But privately, Jiho wondered if they really could. The enemy seemed to have unlimited resources and perfect coordination. Human forces were brave and clever, but they were still vastly outnumbered. The galactic political situation had become a bad joke. While human ships fought and died, most governments continued to debate and negotiate. The Xanthari Empire had actually tried to sign a non-aggression pact with the Swarm, only to have their ambassador ships consumed without response. New message from the Council of Worlds, reported the communications officer. They're offering to mediate a peaceful settlement. What do they suggest we negotiate? Nari asked with bitter humor. Which planets the Swarm gets to eat first? Captain Han's voice joined the conversation from his ship. Admiral, the ghost ship has a suggestion for those council diplomats. They can negotiate with the business end of our railguns. Han's ship had earned the nickname Ghost Ship for its ability to appear where the Swarm least expected it. The converted freighter had destroyed more enemy vessels than some entire fleets. Signal the council, Nari decided. Tell them we didn't come here to lose with dignity. We came here to win ugly. The phrase became legendary among human forces. Win ugly meant using every dirty trick, every desperate tactic, every brutal strategy necessary to survive. It meant caring more about victory than looking good while fighting. That night, Jiho found himself in the ship's observation lounge staring out at the stars. So many of those points of light had gone dark during the war, so many worlds consumed by the endless hunger of the Swarm. Commander Park joined him at the viewport. Couldn't sleep either? I keep thinking about home, Jiho admitted. My world was so peaceful before all this started. We spent our time on art and philosophy, or was something that happened to other people. My daughter is 7 years old, Park said quietly. She lives on Luna with her grandmother while I fight out here. I haven't seen her in 8 months. Why do you keep fighting? You could go home. Earth could withdraw its forces and try to defend only your own system. Park was quiet for a long moment. Because if we don't stop them here, eventually they'll come for Earth too. And because when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what makes us human. Outside the viewport, another human patrol ship passed by, its hull scarred but its course steady. Inside that ship, Jiho knew, were more people who had left their families and homes to fight for strangers. People who could have stayed safe but chose to stand up when others sat down. The war was far from over. The Swarm continued to spread across the galaxy, consuming everything in its path, but as long as humans were willing to fight, there was still hope. And hope, Jiho had learned, was sometimes enough. The final battle began in the red glow of a dying star. The Swarm's primary nexus hung in space like a mechanical cancer, a structure so vast it defied comprehension. Ambassador Jiho stared at the tactical display in horror. The thing was larger than most moons, bristling with weapons and construction bays that spawned new enemy ships every hour. All fleet commanders. This is Admiral Nari Kim. The communication crackled through every ship in the combined human and alien armada. You know what we're here to do. That structure is the brain of the entire Swarm network. If we destroy it, every enemy ship in the galaxy dies with it. Jiho stood on the bridge of Sol's Hammer, now one of the few original human ships still fighting. 2 years of continuous warfare had reduced Earth's mighty fleet to a fraction of its original size, but reinforcements from home had swelled their numbers with converted civilian vessels and hastily built warships. Enemy fleet composition? Admiral Nari asked. Over 2,000 ships defending the Nexus, reported Commander Hanul Park, her voice steady despite the impossible odds. They know we're coming. The plan was desperate because it had to be. Intelligence gathered by brave scout crews showed that the Nexus was nearly complete. When finished, it would control Swarm forces across the entire galaxy with perfect coordination. No fleet, no matter how large or clever, would be able to resist such overwhelming tactical superiority. All ships begin attack pattern Omega, Nari commanded. Remember, this isn't about survival. This is about buying time for the strike team to reach the core. The massive fleet surged forward. Human warships led the charge, their armor blackened by countless battles. Behind them came vessels from every species that had finally found the courage to fight. Altarian cruisers, Keltharian frigates, even a few converted Xanthari luxury yachts crewed by volunteers. Captain Min Seok Han's voice came over the communication channels from his legendary ship, Daegu's Determination. Ghost ship to all vessels. It's been an honor fighting alongside you. See you on the other side. The battle was chaos from the first moment. Swarm defenders swarmed out of the Nexus like angry insects, their black hulls moving in perfect formation. The Allied fleet met them head-on, trading ships for time and space as they fought toward their target. Diegu's determination is taking heavy fire, reported the tactical officer. Captain Han is requesting permission to execute ramming protocol. Denied, Nari said firmly. We need every ship for the final push. But Han's ship was already accelerating toward a swarm battlecruiser. Sorry, Admiral. Sometimes you have to break orders to do what's right. The converted freighter slammed into the enemy vessel at full speed, taking out both ships in a nuclear fireball. The explosion cleared a path through the swarm formation, but the cost was 30 brave souls who would never see home again. Strike teams, this is your window, Nari announced. All squadrons execute insertion run. Small, fast ships broke away from the main battle, racing toward the Nexus structure. These vessels carried the most dangerous cargo in the galaxy. Computer viruses designed by Earth's best programmers, wrapped in simple metal shells that the swarm's sophisticated sensors couldn't detect, Commander. Park led the lead squadron in a ship called Soul's Last Hope. Jiho watched from the command bridge as her tiny craft dodged through defensive fire that lit up space like deadly fireworks. Approaching Nexus perimeter, Park reported. Beginning penetration sequence. The outer layers of the structure were honeycombed with docking bays and construction facilities. Park's squadron dove into this maze, fighting through corridors filled with mechanical defenders that skittered along the walls like metal spiders. Contact! Shouted one of Park's pilots. Swarm units in the main corridor. The battle inside the Nexus was fought with small arms and explosive charges. Human Marines, their magnetic boots clanging on metal floors, advanced through passages that pulsed with alien machinery. Lieutenant Subin Kim led a squad armed with simple chemical weapons, flamethrowers and explosive grenades that the swarm couldn't adapt to fast enough. Core chamber located, Kim reported between bursts of gunfire. The AI's main processing center is directly ahead, but the swarm was learning. As the human teams fought deeper into the structure, mechanical defenders began appearing that were specifically designed to counter their tactics. The enemy AI was adapting in real time, creating new weapons and defenses faster than ever before. We're losing teams, Park announced grimly. Half my squadron is gone. Outside the Nexus, the main battle was going badly. The Allied fleet was being systematically destroyed by swarm forces that seemed to anticipate every move. Admiral Minho's ship, Pride of Alteria, exploded in a ball of plasma as Jiho watched. The proud alien commander who had become humanity's closest ally was gone in an instant. Admiral, called Engineer Unisong from her station, I can boost our weapons output, but it'll overload the power systems. We won't survive the feedback. Do it, Nari ordered without hesitation. If Commander Park can reach the core, our survival doesn't matter. The ship's weapons erupted with power that shouldn't have been possible. Swarm vessels that had shrugged off previous attacks were torn apart by the enhanced firepower, but the overloaded systems began failing throughout Soul's Hammer, and smoke filled the corridors. Deep inside the Nexus, Commander Park finally reached the central AI chamber. The room was vast and filled with pulsing machinery that hurt to look at. At the center sat a crystalline structure that glowed with malevolent intelligence. Beginning virus upload, Park reported. But as she connected her simple computer to the alien system, the AI fought back. The crystalline core flared with light and Park screamed as feedback surged through her equipment. The AI is trying to trace the virus back to our systems, she gasped. It's learning our programming languages in real time. Jiho felt his heart sink. Even their final weapon was being turned against them. The swarm AI was too advanced, too adaptable. It would learn from the virus and become stronger. Commander, you need to get out of there, Admiral Nari urged. Negative, Park replied, her voice strained with pain. I can stop it, but I'll have to manually overload the core. There won't be time to escape. The sacrifice was happening all across the fleet. Captain Lee's ship, Inchan's Pride, stayed behind to hold a critical position while evacuation ships escaped. Engineer Song pushed her overloaded systems past any safe limit, buying precious minutes with her life. Dr. Sua remained on a damaged research vessel to transmit vital intelligence even as enemy ships closed in. Core overload initiated, Park announced. 30 seconds to detonation. Admiral, it's been an honor. The honor was mine, Commander, Nari replied quietly. The explosion that destroyed the Nexus core was visible from across the star system. The crystalline AI chamber erupted in a burst of energy that cascaded through every connected system. Across the galaxy, swarm ships suddenly went dark as their controlling intelligence died. The silence that followed was deafening. After years of constant warfare, the shooting had finally stopped. 6 months later, Ambassador Jiho stood before the memorial wall on Luna, Earth's moon. The wall was made of black stone and covered with names. 2.3 million humans who had died in the war. Behind him, representatives from across the galaxy waited in respectful silence. Admiral Nari Kim, her hair now completely gray and her face marked by loss, stepped forward to speak. She wore a simple uniform with no decorations except for a small pin commemorating the fallen. They called for aid across the galaxy. She began, her voice carrying clearly in the thin air. And only Earth answered. We didn't do it because we were the strongest or the smartest. We did it because when someone calls for help, you answer. That's what makes us human. She paused, looking out at the sea of names carved into the stone. We lost many good people in this war. They died far from home, fighting for strangers who couldn't fight for themselves. They gave their lives so that others might live in peace. Jiho wiped tears from his eyes. His own people were free because humans had been willing to die for them. The entire galaxy was free because one small blue planet had refused to turn away when others needed help. The galaxy has learned something important, Nari continued. Advanced technology and superior firepower aren't always enough. Sometimes the greatest strength is the simple willingness to stand up when everyone else sits down, to fight when fighting seems hopeless, to answer the call when others turn away. The ceremony ended with the reading of names. Each fallen human was remembered, their sacrifice acknowledged by the galaxy they had saved. The list took 3 hours to complete, but no one left. It was the least they could do for those who had given everything. Later, as the representatives dispersed to their ships, many stopped to speak with Admiral Nari. They offered thanks, expressed regret for their government's earlier cowardice, and promised that they would remember humanity's example. Will your people ever forgive us? Asked the Zenthari ambassador, shame clear in his voice. There's nothing to forgive, Nari replied simply. Fear makes people do things they regret. What matters is what we do now. As Jiho prepared to leave Luna and return to the reconstruction of his homeworld, he took one last look at the memorial wall. At the bottom, carved in letters of gold, was a simple inscription in dozens of languages.